So although I've been living in Brussels for 3 years, I've not yet perfected my command of French, but it's still something to work on. So my name is Manfred BOUDREAUX-DEHMER. I'm the Chief Information Officer of NATO. I'm the first Chief Information Officer of the NATO enterprise, which is a wonderful thing to be because nobody can turn around and say, you know what, your predecessor did such a better job than you did. So this is a very, very fortunate place to be at. So I started my work at NATO 3 years ago in September of 2021, and my mandate was just renewed for 3 more years. So in total, this will be a 6-year stint at NATO. So NATO, of course, is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We have 32 member nations, and the 2 newcomers, of course, are Sweden, who joined a bit earlier this year, and Finland. Finland joined last year. So 32 nations that form the alliance. The alliance is 75 years old. So on April the 4th, we just had the 75th birthday of NATO, which was a very, very exciting endeavor. NATO was founded in Washington. That's why we call the North Atlantic Treaty also the Washington Treaty. And there was a big celebration that we had April the 4th, which is the birthday of NATO, in Washington. So the purpose of NATO is to guarantee freedom and security for 1 billion people on the planet, which is a wonderful purpose. And every morning as I go to the office and I pass by the a monument that we have in front of the NATO entrance of the Berlin Wall and a second monument on the other side of the World Trade Center, I'm very touched by the fact that we have this purpose and that we're here to defend 1 billion people on the planet. So speaking about cyber at NATO, we have a set of core values, and cyber is embedded in the core values of NATO. The threats that we face are increasing in frequency and sophistication, and I will talk about the threats here a little bit more in a moment. Also, what's of note is that cyber is a military domain. So we've got the classic military domains of air, land, and sea, and then 2 newer ones, which is space and cyber, and they came into being in the last 6-7 years. So cyber, in addition to all the work that we do to defend NATO networks, it's also a military domain, and the Supreme Allied Commander has it at his disposal to use cyber for purposes of defense. So at the NATO enterprise, we focus on protecting our networks, conducting operations, as well as helping allies enhance the national resilience of cyber. That's one of the core functions of NATO, is a platform to cooperate, to coordinate, to communicate, and it is in the interest of the entire alliance to build up the cyber capabilities of all 32 member nations. And we also provide a platform for consultation and for collective action. Let's talk about threats a little bit. So we've got 4 major areas of threat actors where we see a lot of activity. We see Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And we see a lot of correlation between geopolitical events that are happening and then what are the ripple down effects in cyberspace. So a geopolitical event was, of course, the renewed aggression of Russia onto the Ukraine, the invasion on February 24th, 2022, and we saw in the wake of this, before as well as after, a lot of cyber activity and cyber threats targeting critical infrastructure in the Ukraine, but also targeting other systems that are set up to help the Ukraine and to support them. So there's been an 800% increase of attacks immediately after the invasion coming from Russia. China is a bit of a different threat actor. China is also a very big global threat. As far as the government of China is concerned, of course, that's not the people. It is the government. There are 40 advanced persistent threat actors that are in China, that are operating and that are supported by the Chinese government directly. North Korea, another animal altogether. North Korea has got a lot of commercial activity going on. So I would say because of sanctions that have been imposed on North Korea, there is an economic impact, of course, that this had on the country. And one of the things that the government is sponsoring and that a lot of entities in North Korea are doing is get money into the country through cybercrime. And one of the big things that we see here is ransomware attacks coming out of North Korea. And then lastly, Iran. What happened on October the 7th of last year with the Hamas invasion into Israel has also had a cyber effect based on the geopolitical ramifications of that. So we see a lot of activity coming from Hezbollah and trying to affect systems that we run. So let me talk a little bit about the dynamics of the ecosystem. So there is a big imbalance in terms of cost between attackers and defenders. So typically the cost on defenders is very, very high, while the cost on defenders is very low. And this is just going to be extrapolated through the advent of artificial intelligence that will make this even more prevalent. So there are two methods to counteract that. Method one is you can inflict damage on the attacker. And that is very, very hard to do unless you're a nation who's got an offensive cyber program where you can target systems of other actors. You really cannot do that from a private organization perspective. The other thing is attribution. So attribution is also a tool that can be used. There is technical attribution and political attribution. So while sometimes it may be easy or easier to find out technically who is behind an attack, it's a whole different ballgame politically to attribute that to an actor and to a nation. But it is a tool that is also at the disposal of different people. So the other method is to deny benefits for the attacker, and that is what in the cyber world we've kind of all organized ourselves around that by denying benefits, by making it harder for attacker to get into the system and to get value out of the data or out of the information that you have. So here is a bit of a view on how we look at cybersecurity. So one is risk awareness. So for risk awareness, it is imperative that you know your environment very, very well, and that also means the crown jewels that you're going to protect. So vulnerability assessments, risk assessments is something that we constantly do, and that's also, as I'm speaking here to other cybersecurity professionals, the recommendation to not underestimate that part. It's sometimes easily forgotten, or it's done once where you do a risk assessment or a crown jewel assessment, but it's something that really needs to be updated on a constant basis. Another thing that we place a lot of value in is asset configuration, patching, and vulnerability management. That you have an automated database that shows at any given time for vulnerability management, what do you have in terms of assets, configuration status of those assets, whether it's hardware or software assets, and also the patching levels. So when the next Log4j comes along, the next SolarWinds comes along, that you know within minutes rather than days where you are exposed and where you need to take care of a particular vulnerability. Now, pivoting a little bit more into artificial intelligence, we have put our SOC, our Security Operations Center, on steroids. That is one area where artificial intelligence has helped us tremendously in making sense out of the billions and billions of data points that are coming in across our networks. So we use AI to spot anomalies in the network and to continuously train the model to make sure that we see the attack vector and we detect the kill chain that particular actors can take. And we also uncover and learn from anomalous user behavior. So the threat of insider activity is present in any organization, and we've also found AI to be a very good tool to look for specifically insider threats as well. Now, this is a view on infrastructure. So we look at infrastructure in a cyberspace through three different lenses. One is resilience. And so we've spent a lot of time in the past couple of years on data resilience, and that would be tagging of data and blockchain for logs. So the tagging of data is a realization as to what data you have and what is the confidentiality level of data. So we obsess over that, as you can imagine. At NATO, we've got non-confidential data and confidential and secret data. And we have spent a lot of time in tagging the data and in making sure that if you go into zero trust security and data-centric security, that you have a good understanding of your data. So zero trust is also a concept that we're in the pathway of implementing it to fundamentally change the protection of the network through a castle and moat approach to a object by object approach and a user accessing particular objects. Scalability is another area. So we've got adaptive security, where we use artificial intelligence to look at the behavior of a network, particularly if an attack was going to be ongoing. So this can be very, very helpful in the denial of service, in the DDoS area, where you can automatically implement procedures that will change the behavior of the network under a distributed denial of service attack. There's also threat intelligence integration, so we get a lot of commercially available feeds on threat intelligence, but then also our member nations and a set of partner nations are giving us threat intelligence data, and we use artificial intelligence and an elaborate data analysis platform to make sense out of these threats. And then also natural language processing for automated threat report analysis. So where you created a threat report, it took a lot of time to do that. You can now use artificial intelligence to help in the generation of that data. And then also, lastly, contextual access policies based on behavior analytics. So those are just a couple of areas to highlight as to how we use artificial intelligence to help us in cybersecurity, to make our systems more secure and more sound. And so how much time do we have left, Beatrice? We've got 2 minutes left. And for that, I could take 2 questions. Who wants to ask the first question?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I would like to ask, about what happened during the CrowdStrike incident. Airports being paralyzed, billions of dollars of damage, planes being shut down. But this was basically self-inflicted. My question is, do state actors like China, North Korea, Iran, or Russia have the capability to perform an attack of this scale on NATO ground?
Well, do I know if they have the capability of doing that? I don't. So one of the things in cybersecurity is that we operate on a lot of assumptions. I do not know if such a capability exists, but what I do know is that we're doing a lot to protect systems on the NATO side from such an attack, but then also there's a lot of investment in national infrastructures and in the protection of critical national assets. As far as these attacks are concerned. And then maybe one very quick question, if we have another one. If not, I will be around during the break before the next speaker sets up, so you can also catch me. I'll be here up front. And so with that, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk to you today about NATO and about cybersecurity. Thank you.